Hey guys, what's up? This is Katie. Sorry it's been a while. I've been dealing with some stuff in real life. My mom has been having some health issues, and she's okay, but for a while she was having some issues with her health, and I've been dealing with my own stuff with transitioning out of my transition program and trying to figure out where I'm going to go from here. Um, because if you don't know, at the age, I'm going to be 21 next month, and in the United States, you are you have the option of going to school till you're 21 as long as you have a disability, and they are supposed to provide that for you. And since I'm going to be turning 21, I will age out of that program, and the U.S. Department of Education is no longer required to give me an education. So we need to figure out where I'm gonna go from here. So, but anyway, today I noticed there was a comment on one of my videos. It says, "Well done, Katie. I'm just wondering why the diagnosis took so long. Would life have been different if for you if you had been diagnosed as a child? I have an autistic son, so that's why I'm interested. Thanks." And the user was Pirogam. And this is my response. Okay, first thing you need to know about is I'm a girl. Girls, unless they have severe autism, and even then I think it's a little bit different, they manifest autism differently. Um, they're not like girls with ADHD. It's not always in plain sight. So um, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is things you need to know about today is kids are, I think they said the new status of children, I don't know if this was just Minnesota or in general, of a child being diagnosed is like 1 in 82. I'm not sure. I know it's a lot higher than what it was in the 1 in 160 or whatever it was, children. But now the diagnosis for Asperger's syndrome or just any type of autism is widened. When I was a kid and entered preschool, which that's usually when they start screening for autism, they were not screening very heavily. Um, Autism was still, it wasn't like you heard about autism every day. It wasn't at all like that. Um, when I started preschool, which was in 1994, I was 3, and I at that point had been dealing with epilepsy, and epilepsy can cause learning difficulties, and so I was already upon admission in early intervention because of potential learning delays. But somewhere at like around the 3.5 year mark for me, I had a stroke related to a genetic illness, and that affected my learning more. My mom said I just wasn't right after that, and so that also affected my learning. So there wasn't a label for me. I didn't have Down syndrome or anything like that. I didn't have cerebral palsy. You know, I didn't have mental retardation. I didn't have any of that. So there was no label for kids like me at that time, or in that type of education. We're still very young, but it was obvious that I was very behind in terms of my peers. You know, I didn't gross motor wise. I had a lot of issues. I was still very behind. I didn't tie my shoes till I was 7. I couldn't write. I couldn't. I was having trouble. I mean, there were a lot of things that I didn't achieve in terms of milestones. I talked when I was supposed to talk, and I babbled as a baby, but there were some hidden, I guess, not hidden, but some more obvious signs that they didn't look at that time. They don't look, at that time they didn't look at that because there wasn't anything wrong, or they didn't see it as wrong. According to my mom, I didn't like to be held. I didn't, I didn't sleep well. I didn't eat well. So as I grew older, I would, even as a baby though, my mom commented about this, but she said I never really played with any of the other kids. I was interested, but I just didn't. I'd play with them for like maybe 5 minutes and then go off into a corner all by myself. I mean, I can remember being in preschool the following year and just sitting underneath an oak tree. And in the oak tree, I would just gather little pieces of bark or whatever, not bark, but the wood chips, and just kind of stockpile them. And that was also due to because of my epilepsy, I had complex partial seizures, so only part of my brain was affected, but that would impair my consciousness. So, that's the cat. If I were to have a seizure on the playground and I was on some type of climbing equipment, I would have fallen, and I needed to have someone behind me, and sometimes the teachers weren't always there to be right next to me when I needed it. So a lot of times it was just due to frustration um, of not having someone to do that. But then as I got older, the pattern didn't break. It still was the same. I couldn't really socialize. I mean, I socialized a little bit better than I do now because, you're young and kids seem to be a bit more tolerant when they're that young, and so it wasn't that much of a problem. But it's just as I got older, it got worse and worse. The sensory issues hadn't quite started yet. The sensory issues, I think, started, I don't know, it became more prominent to me around the age of 13, when a tapping noise that would drive me crazy. And, kids would do that with their pencils, and I'd ask them to please stop and keep going. But there was one kind of cardinal sign of not just autism, but some other issues, or just sensory processing disorders, that I was a very, very picky eater. And because I was on a special diet for the protein thing, I needed to eat. So, oh, you didn't finish your chicken, honey? Here's a Twinkie. That type of thing. It was important that I was able to eat something, and it wasn't that I was being defiant or willful. I just didn't. There were just certain things I did not like to eat. Strawberries being one of them. I don't like strawberries even now. No matter what you do with it, I really kind of don't like them. And I'm more open now to eating new things, but it took 18 years basically for me to get to that point where I could sit down and try something new, and it wouldn't be that much of a struggle. I don't know how my life would have been if I had been diagnosed as a child. I think it took 6 times for me to even get diagnosed, 3 times clinically, 3 times through school, and the problem with that was, oh, she makes eye contact. Well, no, I didn't. I didn't make eye contact, but my parents put me through like these socializing how-to classes for other kids with disabilities. And I guarantee you at least a third of those now are diagnosed with autism. And before they were just diagnosed with developmental delay. So there would definitely be times, like I had meltdowns as I got older. And the scary part is when you get older and you have a meltdown and you're so out of control, it can get really scary because you've got someone who is now like a 9-10-year-old kid punching holes in the wall and just going on for hours, and you don't know who to call, and you don't want to put your child in an institution. That's, I think, a lot of what my parents, they didn't want to put me away, but they weren't really sure where to go. And they tried in my particular county, to get me in for child mental health services, and what they would have done is they would have provided a guess, emergency intervention, someone to talk to me and try to get me that calmed down. But because I did not fit into a specific category, um, I was denied services. And that was really hard on my parents because you had this kid who's melting down and obviously in a lot of distress, but there was nothing they could do about it. Um, they tried taking things away from me. They tried removing me physically from the situation, but it just didn't work. It just, um, it just seemed to add more fuel to the fire. Um, but what really kind of I wonder about would be my education. When because of my home district, which is where I'm living now, it got so bad in 10th grade that because of my meltdowns, I only had 4 that year. Mind you, the year before it was almost every day. But I was only got me down to 4. They thought I was making it up, and they thought I was just being belligerent or uh, willful and defiant. And they said, "Oh, you could just stop if you wanted to." And there was just a lot of stuff wrong in that district, and they sent me to another place for children with emotional and behavioral disorders. So level 4 security school. Level 4, I mean, there's only 5 levels. So a lot of these kids had serious anger issues, but they also had learning disabilities on top of that. So, but it helped me because it was a very controlled environment. I mean, very controlled. You had to be on a certain level, which is dictated by your behavior, to go to the bathroom by yourself. Doors were locked. Everything was locked. You wanted something, you had to earn it. But this also worked because they gave me something to work for. Not only just to work for, but they rewarded good behavior versus bad behavior. Um, they would tell anybody who was having a meltdown, um, you've got some options here. You can continue to do what you're doing, and we're just going to keep marking your point sheet up, and you can keep doing this, and we might have to send you ISS, or you can turn this around, and we can go from here. And mind you, I was never in that situation because I seemed to thrive in that environment. Um, but it was very suitable for me because there was a sensory room, and it was just the staff seemed to get it. And when I went to my transition program, I really blossomed in that sense because it kind of forced me into an uncomfortable situation. There was, unlike the level 4 security school, this place is essentially, it was culture shock because there's not a lot of structure. But I found that works too. I mean, there are specific classes, but they're very flexible. If you don't want to be in a certain class, they'll try and make something work for you. Or if you have a certain issue with a certain student, they'll try not to place you in a specific class with that student. So it's been a rough ride, but I don't know. I like it. I like having Asperger's syndrome, and I'm not entirely sure if it would have benefited me as a child who had been diagnosed versus as an adult. And the only reason I did pursue a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome was because of learning. I knew my final year was coming. I knew that this was a critical year um, for me to really get any education and any more improvement in. And I have. I was just talking to my dad today about the things that I've improved on. Noises don't bother me so much. I mean, I still wear my headphones, but like they don't bother me as much. I've learned to deal with other people that irritate me. Um, but also just kind of understanding that sometimes people can't help what they do because it's a disability. Um, I've learned to deal with transitions a lot better. My first year was the year from hell. Um, Naturally, you could understand why autistic people don't like transitions, and that's also another thing my parents saw very young, is I did not do well with transitioning. But even though I didn't act out, that kind of, I guess, excluded me from a diagnosis. I don't know. But, I'm sorry about the cat. He's just messing around right now. But I don't know. So, this is my response to that comment. So I will see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.